All right, with college football approaching so fast now, after the College World Series is all but said and done, and your Tigers are national champions, today we got a special show. This is a Set It Off Network. I'm your host, Michael Set It All, and we're going to be talking about LSU football, the highs of the lows and the lows, all of that in between. We're going to be talking about the 2025 football season because I think there's a lot of people that think the expectation is sky high, but we're going to go through a best case and a worst case scenario in today's video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching, of course, and let's get to it. All right, so today we're going to be breaking down the 2025 college football season. We're not really going to be going that fully in depth. Kind of just breaking down the schedule, and we're going to talk about my opinion on this LSU football team and how I feel like if they want to get to where they want to get to, how it's going to happen. And then we're also going to talk about the negative spin on things. We're going to be talking about if things go wrong, like what does that look like? What does best case scenario look like? What does the worst case scenario look like for LSU? We're going to be talking about it all. So I think the first thing we got to talk about is the returning production on offense, right? Your two important guys that you returned on offense this season are let's go three. Your three important returning guys that you got back on offense obviously starts and ends with Garrett Nussmeier. Coming into that second year starting, everybody's really hoping that he can take that leap like Jaden Daniels, like Joe Burrow type year two leap. So that's what most fans are going to be concerned about. But, people forget about guys like Caden Durham. Even a guy like Aaron Anderson is going to be the other guy I really want to talk about a lot. Those two guys coming back and functioning in this offense are going to be huge for this team. The offensive line there, a lot of new faces, but a lot of good new faces, if that makes any sense. A couple kids from the transfer portal, a couple kids that have been just waiting on their turn. With Brad Davis there, I got full faith in that unit being very solid throughout the entire year. So, what does best case scenario look like for the LSU offense? Obviously, it like I said it before, it starts and ends with Garrett Nussmeier, and the fact that Garrett Nussmeier is in his second season. He's got a full SEC year under his belts. He's been through the ups. He's been through the downs, as we all got to see last year. There were a lot of highs, a lot of lows. But if we can kind of find that even out, right? We can find that middle ground to where the highest of highs might not be there, but the lowest of lows aren't there either. Can we find that consistent week in and week out, like this is what we're going to get? And you kind of saw that through the first couple weeks of the season last year. I thought the USC game he played extremely well. You know, certain games throughout the beginning half of the season, obviously, he showed that consistency, and it comes down to turning the ball over. That's the biggest thing I want to see out of Garrett Nussmeier is if you can go from double-digit interceptions down to 5 to 8. That changes the outcome of a lot of football games, because if you can take care of the football, and you can do some of the things that we all know that he's talented enough to do. You have a great receiving core coming in from the portal. You have a guy like Aaron Anderson. You have a guy like Caden Durham. You're expecting this offense and under Joe Sloan to take that second step as far as being more balanced, running the football with more efficiency this year. You bring in a guy like Bauer Sharp who's going to take that Mason Taylor role. So you have the pieces there to be successful, right? It's all about between the ears with Garrett. We know he's got the talent. We know he's got the arm talent. He can make every throw on the field. But that's a gift and a curse when you have a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, and hopefully Brian Kelly and the staff have gone over with him how important it is to take care of the football, and that you don't have to make every play. And sometimes punting is better than the end result, right? So for me, the highest of highs, obviously, for LSU's offense looks like 2023, right? It looks just like the Jaden Daniels progression from year one to year two. You see Garrett Nussmeier, you see the receivers find those explosive plays in the passing game that were kind of lacking last year. The guys that could take the top off of a defense, a guy like Chris Hilton breaking out and being that deep ball threat. A guy like Aaron Anderson routing guys up, being that safety net that Garrett Nussmeier needs to convert third downs. And what do you remember about that 2023 team is how good they were on third downs. LSU was okay last year in third downs, but you found yourself in a lot of third and longs last year because of the inability to run the ball. So this offense being successful, it's going to take Caden Durham and that offensive line gelling really quickly, Joe Sloan and the offensive staff getting things together to where they can run the ball efficiently, take a lot of that pressure off Garrett Nussmeier to where he's not throwing the ball 40 times a game. Because I feel like LSU is at their best when Garrett Nussmeier is throwing the ball 20 to 30 times. In that range right there would be perfect. Every single game, obviously you're going to have games where maybe you're trailing and you have to throw it a little bit more, or whatever the defense dictates is kind of what you need to do. But in the grand scheme of things, I think LSU's best offense looks like a very balanced offense. And you can say that for anybody in the country. But I think they have the talent at receiver that can be explosive. They have the second-year veteran quarterback, fifth year in college, seen it all, done it all. They have that guy. They have the talent. They have a star running back in Caden Durham, who is going to break out this season. They have a deep running back room. You know, it's not just Caden Durham. They have a lot of talent back there in that the offensive line kind of gels together. Brad Davis gets that unit playing well. And I think that's what the best case scenario is for LSU on offense. So now let's talk about the best case on defense. And a lot of people are going to be buying into this defense very early because you have guys like Whit Weeks. You have guys like Harold Perkins like making an impact back, a guy like Dominic Williams, and then all the transfer portal guys you've brought in, a freshman star like DJ Pickett. A lot of people are going to be talking about this defense early on. And the biggest key for me is, what do we see from Blake Baker from year one to year two? Did he simplify last year's defense so much that they weren't able to play with their full potential? Has he got this entire defensive unit to buy into what he's preaching? All right. And are they able to run more complex things, to confuse more defenses? And I think, obviously, every LSU fan wants to know, can they stop the running quarterback? Because you lost multiple games last year because you couldn't do that. You could easily say you lost the Alabama game, you lost the Texas A&M game, strictly because you couldn't stop the quarterback from running the football. So it's going to be pivotal for Blake Baker and this staff to get that out of this defense this year, because if you have teams that feel like they can just do that, it's going to lead to a lot of problems, because I think you're going to be better on the back end. I think you're going to be a lot better at safety this year. I think you're going to be a lot better at corner this year. It's, can those interior defensive line guys, can those edge rushers play smarter? Because you saw guys like Braden Swinson last year who had excellent years, but maybe when they're playing a running quarterback, we're so focused on attacking the quarterback that maybe they get out of their pass rush lanes and it leads to a big run, or, you know, running the football, stopping the run with the big interior guys, having to call like a lot of exotic blitzes to almost stop the run at times, because you just don't have the depth that the defensive line at LSU and the SEC should have. So you were kind of scheming up ways to stop the run, and all it takes on defense, you know, is one guy being out of position or one guy doesn't do their job, and boom, it's a 65-yard touchdown. How many times last year did we see this LSU football team stop the run for 95% of the game, but it was just 2 or 3 plays there where the guy busts a 40, 50, 60-yard run? And that's all it takes, because that's 7 points. So this defense, I think their peak looks like guys like DJ Pickett stepping in and becoming the shutdown corner on that team. A guy like Ashton Stamps that you've seen progress and get better. Another year under Corey Raymond. A guy like Jakeem Jackson coming in from Florida steps into maybe like a nickel role and plays extremely well. You brought in a ton of safeties. Those guys come in, fill run gaps, and make tackles. Right? We saw that a lot last year, 1-on-1 with your safety, missing tackles. Another reason why those 5-yard runs turned into 65-yard runs. So. That's what it kind of looks like. And I think the best case scenario for LSU as a whole is obviously they have the talent to be the best team in the country. And they have the talent to win the SEC, be in the playoffs. It's just putting it all together, which is extremely hard to do. That's why this is the extreme of the extreme. This is the best of the best. Do I think they're going to go 12-0, and knock down the college playoff door first time under Brian Kelly? No. I don't think they're going to do that. But the potential is obviously there to see something special because they have the players, they have the coaching staff, they have all the resources that it takes to do that. So the highest of highs for me is 12-0. That is the ceiling. That is, what peak LSU this season could be like. And I know that's, a very unrealistic thing because a lot of things happen in college football. So let's talk about more of the downside of this thing and about what does the worst of the worst look like. Well, I think the worst of the worst, I think this team's floor is 8-4, 7-5. If you go 8-4, 7-5 with this team, with this roster, and how much talent they have, there's going to be a lot of moves made in the offseason. Like, you're going to have a lot to talk about throughout the entire season. That means you obviously probably didn't win the opener. You probably lost, several games. Barring injury, it just means you really struggled probably on the defensive side. You weren't as good as you thought you were. And offensively, you probably continued to not run the ball well. And Garrett Nussmeier turned the football over. I think those are the recipes for disaster right there. Not being able to run the football again. A team like that, Garrett Nussmeier is just throwing the ball to the other team a lot. And then on defense, we've talked about it since Brian Kelly got here. It's the same things over and over again. Maybe the defense just isn't good enough, and that would absolutely suck because I think Blake Baker's a great defensive coordinator, and I don't know obviously how it would all turn out, but if you don't get that defensive production and the defense doesn't take an extreme step forward, you're not going to be able to compete for a championship. You're going to miss the playoff. You're going to go 8-4, 9-3, 7-5 worst case. But if they don't take that step forward, then this team, I don't think this team's going to be as good offensively as they were statistically last year. So I think the defense is going to have to pick up a lot of the slack this year. I think that LSU has the potential to be great. But, with that being said, LSU is not a sustained winning program now. They have, found ways to lose games they shouldn't lose, and so 7-5 seems like the floor. Barring injury, I think that's about as low as they'll go, and that's probably meaning losses to Clemson, Ole Miss, A&M, Alabama, teams like that, your normal suspects, but maybe dropping a game here and there that you probably should have won, and just not playing well throughout the entire year. But yeah, that's really what the worst case looks like there. The defense not doing their job, the offensive line not coming together very well, and a lot of new faces in there don't play very well, and like I said, you still can't run the ball. Maybe you obviously probably aren't pass protecting as good as you were last year with the 2 tackles you had, and I think maybe the receivers coming in just don't get it immediately. They have the talent, they're just not kind of like figuring things out on the fly there. But you know, that's why it's the worst case scenario. I obviously think LSU's going to be right in that middle tier area. Um, Not necessarily going to give my prediction on what I think they're going to do, but just want to talk about the disaster scenario like that, where LSU loses seven or loses 5 to 4 games, and I think you'll see a lot of coaching staff changes, and I wouldn't put it past that LSU could possibly be moving on for Brian Kelly if that's the result, because I think LSU fans invested a lot into this season, and I think the athletic department invested a lot into building this roster. So there's no more excuses. There's no more excuses for this team. It's win this year and continue that success, because LSU fans don't like waiting around, and they don't like investing their time and money into a football program that's not winning football games. So it'll be a big year for Brian Kelly. Obviously, I think this is the most pressure he's under in his entire football career. I don't think he's ever faced this kind of pressure to win at Notre Dame or Cincinnati, obviously wherever he was been at. Because the pressure in Louisiana when LSU football is not playing well and not winning, it can get on you quick. And we've seen a lot of people fall from praises here. And so I think it's a very important year for Brian Kelly and this staff to prove that they can do it and they can make it to the playoffs. And I think it even goes a step beyond that. I think even competing for the championship. Like that's how deep I think people are invested in this football team this year. There's going to be a lot of high expectations, and it all begins game one. Because you've lost 5 season openers in a row, and people are going to tune into that, and a lot of the country's going to be expecting the same result. But LSU fans are tired of it. They're tired of losing that first game. So you can really set the tone for how the season's going to go based off of what you see in that first game against Clemson. But that's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you like it. Leave your comment. Let me know what you think the highest of high and the lowest of low is for LSU football season. I think there's going to be a wide variety of opinions on this. So leave your comment. Let me know how what you think. And make sure you keep tuning in and subscribe to the channel. Do all that cool stuff, man. And we will see you guys next time.